So with all the talk around the nation, people moving all over the place, Florida is one of the top places that's coming out. So we're going to talk today about moving to Florida. Is it a risk to move right now? We're getting after that next. Hey everybody, my name's Craig Cunha. I'm a real estate agent here in Southwest Florida, and if you're looking for a channel to tell you a little bit more about what it's like to live, play, eat, sleep, and buy real estate on the Gulf Coast, this is the channel for you. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the little bell, make sure you're notified every time, and if you'd like to get your MLS search started now with direct access into the MLS, go to our nextfloridahome.com and get set up with an account there. You'll start viewing things right away. If you've got a question like many other people have and you need a direct answer, you've got to call, text, or email because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast. All right, so it seems like everybody is out there talking about a move to Florida. Well, there's moving going all over the country. Everybody knows that. Some states people are more desperate to get out of than others, but Florida's a destination that a lot of folks are trying to get to. And are there risks in this? And are there risks even in living in the area, things that maybe you didn't think about? We're going to discuss some of those things and how they actually play out for you and maybe a different perspective for you to take when dealing with these questions. All right, so first thing is it a risk to buy a home right now? Well, yes and no. It really depends on a couple things. What's your timeline in this house? Are you trying to stay in this home long term? Is this just a flip situation, just trying to make some money? Is there money even to be made? I'm sure there's going to be some money to be made. In the immediate future, possibly, depending on how this trend continues with the shortage. But you really want to look at how you're going to be using the property. If you are moving here for work and this is a long-term hold, it's not a risk to buy. You need a place to live. Rent is absolutely obnoxious right now, even in comparison to mortgages. I don't care what the mortgage rate interest changes are, and we're going to be talking about that in a minute, but that really doesn't factor into this because you need a place to live. You need to survive. And in surviving, a roof over the head is number one. So long hold, go ahead, do it, jump in, make the best decision you can, get some help with the process, get some guidance. And again, if you've been listening to these videos for any amount of time, get in your car and drive. We're going to be talking a little bit more about something else you can do on top of the driving around that might make it even more successful for you. As we talk about the affordability risk, we have to also talk about what's going on in people's minds right now. This brainwashing thing that's going on out there about rates. Yes, interest rates going up will change affordability, but the overwhelming thought process is, and I don't know if it's the media, I don't know if it's our friends, I don't know if it's just talk of the town, but everybody wants to know or wants to share what their interest rate is on their mortgage. Hey, I got a 2.75. Well, I got a 3.5. Well, damn, man, I got a 4.275. What does that matter? What does that payment look like? So stop focusing on the interest rate, because now as we're getting up on 5%, people are starting to pull back saying, but it's 5%. All right, what does that translate to in a payment? Because when you go to get a car, you're not focused on the rate, you're focused on the payment. In fact, the sales guys focus on the payment, and so is the manager and everybody else. It's all about the payment. So if you find a payment that's affordable, stop focusing on the rate. Get the house that makes sense for you, make sure that you can make that monthly payment, and just move on. Start living the life that you came here for. And the last thing I'm going to say about rates is that in about 5 to 7 years, we may turn around and be double-digit percentage, and you're going to look back and say, man, I got a 5% interest rate on my mortgage. Can you believe it? Because there was a time it was exactly like that. So once again, lock in the best rate you can and move on. All right, another risk when you're moving to an area is knowing the area, getting used to the area, finding out what it's like to be there. You can only ask so many questions and live through other people's suggestions. So you're going to do what we talk about all the time. You're going to drive the area. You're going to drive from city to city. You're going to find out which one makes sense, and then you'll start to dial in the neighborhoods. And as you start to dial in these neighborhoods, Jay and Jackie, you've heard their names before, they told me what they did in this process, and it was actually pretty darn smart. They not only did the driving part and learned a ton, but what they learned first is that area that they were really dialed into. And they even rated them. They had a rating scale of 1A, 1B, 1C. So they did this as a way to kind of feel the area and know where their priority is going to be. But then the next step they took was renting Airbnb or VRBO in their desired neighborhoods. Because as Jay said to me, I can drive around all day long, but I'm not going to know if there's going to be motorcycles ripping up and down the neighborhood throughout the day. Or I'm not going to know what's going on around the neighborhood throughout the course of a day unless I'm living in it. So that's a pretty smart idea. If you've got the time and the ability to come down a couple times, and maybe you just schedule this. If there's an area that you really think is of interest for you, go ahead and schedule that Airbnb now. Spend a week there. See what it feels like. You could also, because these are short-term rentals, you can split your week or your 2-week stay up into multiple properties so that you can try different neighborhoods. But that was a great suggestion. Thank you, Jay. Get in one of these houses, 2 of these houses, and feel what it's like to live there. Because then when you move into the home in the neighborhood, you'll know exactly what to expect. All right, so since we're talking about Jay and Jackie, I've got to tell you today is closing day for them. Yes, they are getting their Cape Coral Golf Access pool home with direct access, sailboat access, no bridges, no lock. Absolutely phenomenal home. This was actually a builder's model at one time. Just a stunning home. They're locking it down, but you may remember there was an issue. Back before, the seller didn't want to sell. After he signed off on it and had the discussions with his family about having to move, got cold feet. Was trying to find any way to get out of it. And even went to the point of trying to get us as agents to connect him with the buyer so that he could negotiate the contract to go away. Well, we don't allow that. We never encourage a buyer and seller to discuss things because there's so many things that can go sideways. It can take one awkward or wrong comment to totally blow up a deal. So that's why you hire a real estate agent. They're there to act on your behalf, just like when you hire a lawyer. You don't get a lawyer to fight your battle for you and then sit down with the other side trying to talk with them about it. It just doesn't work that way. There's too many emotions involved. So let your agents do it. We thankfully worked past that issue. The seller finally just bought into the fact that he was going to have to give up the home, and Jay and Jackie are now going to be living in this fantastic home in Florida. Now, since we're talking about moving to Florida, there's also a moving risk. And Jeff found this out, unfortunately, just in this past week. Jeff moved here from the California coast. And in this move, he was choosing the different companies to move with. He had an experience with Mayflower previously and had a good experience. But he got a better rate from Nationwide this time, so he thought, I'm going to give them a chance. Well, he now wishes he would have stuck with Mayflower. Because in this process, not only did his stuff get held up for a number of weeks in their trucks, but the starting price that was cheaper than going to Mayflower wasn't the end price. Just like I've told you about some of the other moving experiences that people have had and some of the horror stories, these people, once they have your stuff on the trucks, you are now at their mercy for whatever increases they put on you. One of his big things was they told him, I can't get one of my big trucks in your neighborhood, so we got to send a small truck. Well, that small truck is now another $1,000 upcharge. Yeah, they made it his problem. Now, in this process, they also shuffled his things from storage facility to truck numerous times. What happens when you're shuffling around somebody's property and belongings multiple times? You damage it. So some of his stuff then came out damaged. He didn't get the stuff. It came busted up. They raised the prices on him. They told him it was going to cost him more to get it to him because they had to go to Miami, which makes no sense. Total other coast. But he's going to pay for these charges. This is just some of the stuff, some of the horror stories that are going on in the moving industry. So if you know of a moving company that does great service and won't be changing rates on you and will promise and fulfill their promises to you, stick with them. His suggestion is go to Mayflower and never, ever use Nationwide if you can get away with it. Another risk is you have to navigate the different decisions and actions that people have in this crazy market with all the desperation to find something. I found this in one of the forums this week, and somebody was apparently up in the Punta Gorda market, and they posted that they were looking for a home for their family. And, it seems like a reasonable request. See if anybody knows of anything off market might be coming up. See if they can get an opportunity before it gets thrown in front of everybody and becomes a feeding frenzy. Well, they found out, somebody did a little background search on the person asking and found out he's a real estate investor. Ugh, okay, you're posing as a buyer for your family, and now we find you're an investor. Didn't go over well. The guy basically got lit up all over Facebook for it. Now, does he have a family? The picture suggests he does. Did he want it for the family to move here? Possibly. But right now, the sentiment towards investors in Florida isn't a very good one. So it's going to be more difficult if you're an investor coming in and you're trying to do something like this that's off market and you're trying to play on people's emotions to see if you can get their help. This isn't going to go well for you. I can't say whether if it was truly for his family, how that would go over. There's not a lot of properties that people are going to sell off market like that because they understand if I put it on the market, most likely you're going to get multiple offers and possibly get a better price. But this is another example of what the desperation of this real estate market is causing people to do to try and get their piece of Florida. There's also the risk of waiving inspection. We've talked about this before. People are starting to waive inspections. Now, inspections can be thought to be a way out for a buyer anywhere along the 7 to 10 days, which in reality it can be, but it's there specifically to do your due diligence on the property, make sure there's nothing wrong with it, maybe check insurance rates and things that are going to affect you monetarily. But in this particular case, we're talking about a home that somebody was having inspected, and thank God they had this one inspected. Here's what could happen to you if you skip an inspection. They found Chinese drywall in this house. You know what the problem with that is? The house was already remediated for Chinese drywall, yet there's still a piece of board in there that says China. So somebody messed up somewhere along the road, and without this inspection, that person would have been saddled with this problem. Now, if you don't know anything about Chinese drywall, it was a huge issue previously because there's an off-gassing that happens with humidity and the Chinese drywall, and it causes corrosion on metals. It can cause health issues. So you don't want Chinese drywall in the house whatsoever. And in this case, thankfully, they found out they have the opportunity to either get out or to have the seller fix this before they take it over. This next risk I observed firsthand. I'm in the store the other day, and obviously with the pandemic, there's a new way to get your food. You can now order it from the store and pick it up. Unfortunately, you may not know where your food's being stored until you pick it up. In this particular store, and you can guess what store it is if you'd like. You can probably tell by the blue bins, maybe some of the markings around the video, but this stuff was sitting in bins in the direct sunlight next to the windows. I'm going to tell you, if it's me as the consumer and I'm asking you to package my food so I can come pick it up for convenience, and I find this is what you do with it, why would I want my things stored in direct sunlight? What could that possibly be doing to the packaging and the food inside? Just another example of relying on somebody else to do the things that you should be doing if you can. If you can't, find a store where you can go in and observe where they're going to store your things before committing to buying from them. There's two other big risks that are very common for our area, and Khaled had called me earlier this week and he expressed both of them to me. His wife was very concerned about hurricanes and very concerned about gators. Yes, we've talked about both. You know my stance on both of them. I, in my 25 plus years here, haven't experienced anything bad in either regard. As far as hurricanes go, we're kind of in that southwest corner. We're in a position on the state where it's very difficult for a storm to come full force at us. And the biggest bonus, and if we look at all the storms that have happened around the country this year, just the beginning of this year, and how random and how strong they're going through, many times there's no warning. You know what's unique about a hurricane? You've got a week, possibly more, if you're going to know when that storm is going to come. And they're going to show you 100 different ways that this storm could go with the spaghetti plots. But you'll know if it's coming, if it's going to be close, and if you would choose to get out or stay. You can fly, you can drive, you can take a boat, do whatever you want to get out of the way of this thing. Many of these other natural disasters that are happening, you don't have that choice. There isn't enough time for that. So that shouldn't be a concern for you. As far as wildlife, yeah, we've got gators, and we've got bobcats and coyotes. And feral hogs, snakes, you go in the water, we've got sharks and jellyfish, barracuda, all kinds of stuff. Is this stuff looking to harm you? Not at all. Most of it's actually trying to run away from you. But there are those people that are very scared of these things, and I get it. I don't like snakes any more than the next person, but I'm not going to make my decision to move to an area because of it. As nearly every single state that we have in our country has some kind of animal that can hurt you if it wanted to. Now, mention of these storms that we had just seen in these past couple weeks. In Florida, storms come up on us very quickly. If you're a boater, as you know, I'm newly getting acquainted with the boating, and this will be my first official storm season to be going through the boating aspect. But these storms can come up on you quickly, and they can come up intensely. And in fact, somebody even noted last night when I was speaking with them that we were getting a lot of these severe weather warnings that are popping up on our phones, on our computers, on our TVs. And I think that's just because we've had some pretty significant storms this year. We didn't used to have so many of those severe warnings, but you will see them more and more as these weather patterns continue. And here in Florida, a true thunderstorm can be strong and severe, or it can just be moderate. Pay attention to what's going on around you. It really isn't that bad. But if you're driving especially, I've had other clients note this, that downpours are not like the rain you're used to. A downpour here not only makes it very difficult to see at any speed, but you could easily find yourself hydroplaning across the road. So if you're somebody that's not that accomplished as a driver in the snow, going through a big puddle of water isn't going to be much better. So use caution when you get yourself into these situations and you'll be all right. Well, since we briefly touched on the flooding there with the hydroplaning, let's talk a little bit about Florida. Here's a fun fact for you. Florida is not the highest risk state for flooding, yet we get the biggest amount of crap for it, right? Everybody's always talking about our flood insurance and talking about how expensive it is and talking about these flood zones. Do you know that almost every state has flood zones? Yeah, in differing degrees. Did you know that Florida has some of the cheapest flood insurance on average? Not saying in particular areas, but on average. The cheapest state for flood insurance is Florida. Sounds odd, but it's true. And there's a couple states, they have higher risk ratings than Florida. So why do we get such a bad rap for this? Well, because we're surrounded by water, especially Cape Coral. We just have a ton of water around us. So these ratings that come out, there's been talk that maybe the elevation certificate won't be playing in as much as it once did, but I'm finding evidence that, yeah, it will. It does still play a part in it. So get an elevation certificate. If you're building a home, see if it can be built a little higher to get out of the floodplain, and just check these rates whenever you go to purchase a home. This is part of the due diligence process that we just talked about in that 7 to 10 days. Don't let this part slip. When you're checking on insurances, check on the flood insurance and see how it's going to affect you. Now, they did rework the maps, and there's supposed to be some new ways they're doing it. They're saying that there's going to be an increase for a good percentage of the people, but they're saying it's like $100. And then they're talking about the decrease for another 20% of the people. Well, it's $100 that way too. So these changes that they're talking about, they're not massive changes. It's not to say some of you won't be affected by bigger changes, but it's also very conditional. So if you're looking to be on the water, to have your Gulf access, and you're all the way in one of the riskiest areas, just take that as part of what the expense of living there is. You're not going to get around it. Once there's flood insurance put on the property, if you have a lender, you're going to have to keep it. If you pay cash, hey, take the risk on yourself. This coverage is only for $250,000 for the structure anyway, and another $100,000 for contents. So if you spent $2 million on a home, is that insurance really something that you're that worried about? Now, one thing about flood insurance that you have to take into consideration is when you're taking over somebody's home, you can also take over their flood insurance policy. Why is this important? As we head into the hurricane season, there's normally a 15 to 30 day waiting period to get a new policy started. So if that's happening anywhere after June 1st, you're now officially in the hurricane window. So you could have a storm any time from that time forward. If you were transferring a property and don't have flood insurance on it, and a storm did happen to come, and there was a storm surge, which with all the warnings for it and all the years I've been here, I still haven't seen it. But if it were to happen and you didn't have the coverage, Now you're covering the whole thing yourself. But if you get that seller to transfer their policy over to you, you will keep their rate and keep the policy in effect until the next renewal. At that point, it's just going to be your policy as it would have been previously, but you're taking over their rate, most likely going to be a lower price, and it's going to cover you through this time frame so that you're not taking on the risk. Another risk that we have in this area is if you're a new business coming in, are you going to have employees? Because what we're seeing here is absolutely ridiculous. We have hundreds, if not thousands of jobs that are out there that we can't get people to work. And some of them, we're talking Lee Health, they have over 2,000 positions that they can't get people for. They did a job fair recently. 82 different employers were there with thousands of jobs. 500 people showed up. How many left with jobs? I don't know, but this was an opportunity they could all directly talk to the recruiters right there. Get an instant interview. And that's what we had as people showing up, 500. So if you're somebody coming in the area looking for jobs, you're going to have plenty to choose from. There's even a contracting company that had 160 positions. So the work, there's plenty of different types of work to be done here. What fits you? It just depends on your experience and what the company's opportunities are for training. But you as a new company, if you're going to need employers, this is absolutely a potential risk for your business in not having employees to cover these shifts. All right, so that's a little bit more about moving to Florida. And is it risky to move right now? Yeah, you make your decision. I'd love a comment down below to tell me what you think. And if you're looking for more information about what it's like to live in Florida or some of the surrounding cities around the state, check out one of these other videos. And if you've got a particular question that you need an answer to, you've got to call, text, or email because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast.